oh, nobody's making a vibrator that looks like this. We launched that product on Indiegogo, raised over $500,000 in 45 days.
Am I correct in saying that you're like the biggest funded like sex toy campaign in the history of Kickstarter?
For Eva, our first product, that campaign in the sex toy space is the most funded campaign. I don't know of any other.
Today on Deep Feed, I chat with Alex Fine, the co-founder and CEO of Dame Products. Dame is a sexual wellness company that is committed to changing the way sexual wellness and pleasure is experienced and understood in the world. Dame made a huge splash when they launched as one of the most successful sex toy crowdfunding campaigns in history, and have since raised millions of dollars in funding to scale the brand. Alex brings a wealth of knowledge about entrepreneurship and marketing to the conversation. Let's get into it. Hi, Al. Welcome to Deep Feed.
Hi, Winter. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you are known for breaking a lot of barriers, which we'll get into, but I'd actually love to start at the beginning. So can you tell us about your background and what inspired you to start Dame?
Let's see. So my more professional background is I wanted to be a sex therapist for a long time. So I have my master's in clinical psychology, and was always really passionate about the role sex plays in our overall well-being. And so that's kind of like what I was doing. And then I realized I was way too impatient to be a therapist. And I worked in a small consumer goods shop. And while I was there, I realized I wanted to start a consumer goods brand in the sexual wellness area. I had some really interesting ideas that I was like, oh, nobody's making a vibrator that looks like this. And there was no brands out there that I wanted to follow on Instagram. And it just felt really obvious that this area wasn't being approached by the people who were really using the products, didn't seem to be developing the products. So yeah, I came up with my own idea and I started making it at home. I found an awesome business partner who had gone to MIT for mechanical engineering. We launched that product on Indiegogo. We raised over $500,000 in 45 days. That launched that was over 9 years ago now. And now I have a sexual wellness business that sells in Target, Revolve, Urban Outfitters, Free People. I mean, most of our business on our website, though.
Yeah, so you mentioned the first crowdfunding campaign was in 2014 with Indiegogo. Then you did another one, right, with Kickstarter. And I think, am I correct in saying that you're the biggest funded sex toy campaign in the history of Kickstarter?
I think so. I believe that, or definitely at the time, for Eva, our first product, that campaign in the sex toy space is the most funded campaign. I don't know of any other campaign that's been funded more.
Yeah, I'm curious too. And well, actually backing up too, I read that you were the first sex toy company on Kickstarter, right? You helped change the policy.
Yes,
with Kickstarter.
We got to change the policy, which is this really cool way that I feel like I'm using capitalism to change capitalism or just change policy. And yes, Kickstarter. I remember when I first applied for Kickstarter with Eva, our first crowdfunding campaign, they just hard shot me down. And then the second time after they saw the first and the brand was alive and they understood what we were trying to do more holistically, and I had actually met some people who worked there, the second time we reached out, they immediately were we feel like we're not sure why we always say no to this, and we'd love to explore that. And they really kind of very quickly were we want to approach this category from a different perspective, and we're realizing that we have preconceived notions that maybe aren't grounded in fact and reality and what is really good for people.
Yeah. What made you want to do, obviously the Indiegogo one was so successful that you wanted to do a second one, but was there anything particularly that drove you to doing crowdfunding versus like raising capital in other more traditional ways?
Because I didn't, before you finished the question, I had already decided what the answer was in my head, which is crazy that humans do that. And it was going to be cash flow. Like, cash flow is an amazing reason to do crowdfunding. But of course, investors solve the cash flow problem too. I remember back in 2014 when we launched the company, I applied for an accelerator and I pitched them on the product, which was maybe good and bad. But anyway, I pitched the brand and the product, and one of the judges wrote back, like, a big thing is like you pay $50 or $100 and the judges are going to review. So at the very least, you're going to leave with like 2 investors having seen your deck and giving you feedback. And one of them just wrote like, "Is this a joke?"
Wow.
And so that was the vibe I was getting from the investor community. And I also remember, though, my very, very first meeting with like a outside company about the category and what I was trying to do was with this really fancy IP firm called Fish and Richardson. They're like very, like, I remember their office had like all glass doors, and I had like this bag of like handmade vibrators, and I was just like, what am I doing? But they were women, and they immediately understood the category, and they did our IP for free, and that really validated me. And then I had this very invalidating, the opposite of experience there with investors. So
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know that SexTech is only, I think now, like getting seen for what it is. I think many years ago, it's taken like so many years to get seen as something like legitimate.
Well, I would argue that Hims and Roman did not seem to have that problem, and I don't think that people even realized that it was sex tech,
Right.
which I think is really interesting, because that's sex tech.
Yeah, I actually didn't even think about it like that either with Hims.
Yeah.
But it is totally sex tech.
It is. I think they've both, have leveraged that in different ways and are doing different things. But I do think what's really fascinating is both of those, like their original core product offering, and I believe still very much so to this day, a big source of their revenue is a technology that helps you have better sex.
Right. Well, I wanted to, before we move on to that, because I have a lot of questions there too, but when it came to the crowdfunding campaign specifically, I don't think people realize how difficult it is to run a successful crowdfunding campaign. And brands are like launching on Kickstarter, and it is a huge point it is a launch pad for brands. But I'm curious, I've looked obviously at the campaign and all the details, but I would love to know like even like the nitty gritty of how you and your business partner plan the campaign, like your marketing strategy around it. Like, how did you get it to that finish line?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I do want to just say that it was interesting running both of those campaigns and being in business now for as long as I've been in business for. Times are different. Things change too. So comparing yourself right now to something that happened 2 years ago in the middle of the pandemic, or 6 years ago, like when I launched our first crowdfunding campaign, that was when like Now This videos were really popular on Facebook, and there was just like, it was like real beginning clickbaity times.
Right.
Like every publisher would produce, like people want exclusives now. They're not just trying to push out as much content, but the PR media landscape was different. So everything just keeps changing. So there's that. I feel like that was important to say. But I would say you need to have a really great compelling video. Classic, like explain the problem, explain your solution, and get people to believe that like you can do it. You want to start generating, so like that's core. Like, make a good video. It doesn't need to be, like, you're pitching a pre-order campaign. People don't need it to be super produced. Like, they want to transparently meet you
Yeah.
and see how you make things. And that's, I don't know. So do that. Make good content. Keep it lo-fi. Tell your story and the problem you're trying to solve in the world. Then build a list. So start doing that beforehand. You want to start like talking to people who can write about you. Find like 8 writers who have written an article that you feel like is related to what you do. Reach out to them on Twitter. Like, find them. If you can hire a PR agency that can do that, great. But I do think people really want to hear from you as the founder. So make those authentic, real connections. I remember I downloaded all of the contacts off of my Gmail. You can do that. Mm-hmm. I forget how, but I'm sure you can Google it. And then I was able to download like all 5,000 people that I'd ever emailed or something crazy like that. And I went through the list and I made them into sections of 450 emails because you can email only 500 people a day on Gmail. And I just did mail merges. And I just sent people, like, I think 2 weeks before, just letting people know I was going to do something and that it would mean a lot to me that if they could just, like, show up, like, any, I think I had a little bit of an email drip campaign with different CTAs around, like, obviously just pledging, but just supporting my Facebook post and helping to, kick my things onto the algorithm.
Yeah. Do you think that email was the biggest driver of getting pledges?
In the very beginning, yes, like on that first day. But then once we got a BuzzFeed article and a Refinery 29 article, the whole thing just like really, it just took off.
Yeah. Do you think press drives sales now for brands?
Yes, I think that affiliate marketing is really powerful, and people still love social proof. They don't want to just hear from the brand. They love hearing from other trusted brands about their experience. It's so hard now, I think, on e-commerce to it's so easy to sell an image, and people, I think, kind of know that, and they want to make sure that they're buying good quality products, so they trust other publications and PR. And that's also now how a lot of those publications are making money. Like, I'm convinced Glamour is like stood up on vibrator sales.
Really?
I don't
yeah. That's very cool. So, how did you keep the hype going? Like, you made your goal.
Did I?
Did you? Yeah. Like, you built the brand, right? You grew.
Yeah.
Did you see the people who pledged originally? Like, did they come back as repeat customers? Like,
yes.
Okay.
I remember being really surprised by how many of them came back and bought Eva 2. It was something like 20%. And just, it is a pretty, from a different platform, there was like, vibrators are pretty durable. Like, our products continue to last. So it's not the same thing as like clothing or replenishable. Like, now we sell things like lubricants and aloe and our massage oil, which I told you we used to call it sex oil. I always want to call it sex oil. Our massage oil, our gummies, our supplements, those all have stronger retention than our vibrators. But we do see strong retention. It's just a longer period of time.
Yeah. So where did social media come into that too? I'm curious. Like, were you using social? Were there particular platforms that were successful as well around the campaign?
Social media. It's like I immediately have anxiety just thinking about social media. Social media has played is like our toxic partner, that really lifts us up or can really drag us down and feels just chaos. So, like, yeah, social media, I don't think the brand would be where the brand is without social media. Like I did utilize, Facebook really back then to like, I'm I'm a young millennial. I don't remember. I'm a millennial. I'm not Gen Z. I did not have an iPhone until after college. And so I was like, so I remember though, like I got a good amount of traffic and awareness from Facebook. And that was really, really helpful. And I'm so appreciative of that. And I think that we continue to use our organic media to like grow, but Facebook also doesn't, like, we have never had access to all of Meta's or Twitter's like capabilities. That's not true actually. So there was a moment where I had my own Facebook page and my own brand, like Gary V, but like Al Fine, which like I guess still exists. Like you can follow me on Instagram or like, but I was running ads to promote me and this amazing article I was just featured in, which, oh, look, happens to tell you about sex toys because you cannot directly advertise sex toys on the platform. And when we were doing that, the overall lift, I mean, not only was it a very profitable, scalable funnel, but I saw just a general lift too on our organic content. So then, we were able to do that for like 8 months and we were really taking off. And then they decided, even though they had originally approved this like creative solution to promote my energy and the value I'm bringing to the world, they just decided that the New York Times article was like too risque.
Oh, wow.
Which is wild because it was like right around the time too that like they were figuring out that they had maybe been the reason why 2016 happened. Like truth on Facebook was, and still, I guess it still is, but we were just becoming aware of like how poorly that content is moderated. And I was being censored when hate speech and these other things weren't being censored. And it was just like, I'm not, that's wrong.
Yeah.
They got that all mixed up. Anyway, and especially because they really did like shut me down, not just the company. Like it was like my brand. And that put us in a really tight bind because we had inventory that was coming in to continue to meet our demand. We have to order our products like 6 months in advance. And we had the rug pulled out from underneath us. And that was a really, thank you, Meta.
Yeah. So what
help me build resilience?
Yeah, seriously. What's the advertising situation now? Like fast forward today.
Fast forward today. Are you clever? No, that's not fair. It is gray. And to some extent, like, I mean, I have strong feelings. Like, I know what I think the advertising policy should be. Like, I don't think that we should just be allowed to advertise anything, anywhere. I think that any advertisement that elicits, like, and this is subjective, like, too strong of an emotional response, like, isn't great. But we can advertise and talk about sex and sex toys, and that's not inherently arousing. Like, for me to be like, this is a great vibrator, this is the motor I used, like, it's not sexy just to talk about them.
Right.
So, oh my God, what was the question? Like, where is it at today?
Where's advertising today for your brand?
So I can advertise our lubricants, our body positioning pillow. So there are things I can advertise, and we are always experimenting with how we can use that to promote the overall brand. But also performance marketing is so expensive right now. So there's that. And honestly, I do feel like you got to know that you have good organic connection with consumers. And since we haven't always had access to those platforms, like, we've had to focus on that. But also to where it is now, it's still like you can't, like, their policy is you cannot advertise anything that promotes sex promote sexual pleasure. Like, you can advertise condoms for health reasons, but not if they're ribbed for pleasure. Then you cannot advertise them.
Interesting.
However, what you can advertise, like there's just an explicit call out, is like, except for erectile dysfunction medication and premature ejaculation wipes, those are allowed, even though like those are not health. Like, you don't need those products in order to live. You don't need those like. Nobody needs to have sex in order to live. Sex is something we want because it makes us feel a certain way, and we're giving people with penises more access to that than those with vulvas for like no good reason. And also, especially the premature ejaculation wipes, like, you can have sex, you're just making it longer for the reason of pleasure. So why is that allowed?
Yeah.
But, vibrators are not.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you've been in this fight for a long time. And I feel like, I mean, obviously from Kickstarter and like those policies, but also the MTA, right?
Yeah.
Like, you sued the MTA.
Yeah.
And you mentioned HIMSS before. Like, what was the reason that you sued the MTA? Like, what was the landscape at the time?
You get that snort? You got it? Okay, so the landscape at the time was, really set the context. Like, thanks a few years before we came in the market, they had some challenges with the MTA and were able to leverage the press and create pressure so that they can run their ads, which were underwear for people with periods. And those were such good ads, man.
They were good ads.
Those were so good. That egg made me feel feels. Like, love those ads. And so, like, that was part of it. Like, there had been some precedent for brands taking action and having these challenges. And then another brand, Unbound, they went to go run advertisements with them, and MTA said that they wouldn't run their ads. So they, like, got press around it. And in the press statement, in the New York Times, the MTA explicitly says we would run ads for sex toy companies. Like, we would do that. So I called them up and I was like, all right, like, let's do it. Like,
Yeah.
And I was like, do you like these ads or these ads? Like, I totally bent over. I was like, how can I serve you to make this a reality? And they picked the ads, they approved them, and then they ghosted us. Like, we made the ads, I ordered everything to run this campaign, and they just, like, stopped responding. And then we kept on emailing them, and finally they were like, we do not and would never work with any sexually oriented business, period. And if you were on the subway at that moment, you would know that that was not true, because you were likely, like, facing a 6-foot cactus or
Right.
rose. No, HIMSS is we make hard easy. Or is that? They were both very actively running advertisements and that were explicitly sexual and for sexual products. Then you also had, like, OK Cupid ran an amazing campaign, the Museum of Sex, which is a really amazing store in New York City that sells Dame products and also has just, like, an unbelievably fun museum. All of those brands were running ads. So I was like, that's not true. Like, that's not, you need to explain more. And because they are a government agency, they actually really do need to deploy their policies evenly. They can't just pick and choose where their policies apply and where they don't apply. So we were able to sue them, and we did. And we eventually won the rights to run the ads through settling. We settled, and we were able to run the ads, which was still like, but we ran them. And they were so beautiful, but we couldn't show vibrate. Like, they were, it was such a pain, but I think I got what I wanted to get out of it. But since then, they've actually, like, changed their policies completely. But I'm still seeing ads that I think are inherently sexual in nature, so I'm interested to see where that goes. And that kind of coincided also with them changing their policy around cannabis and adding a lot of specific regulations for that, because that's an interesting also parallel industry.
That is really interesting too. But yeah, I remember seeing also like breast augmentation ads and like
oh my God.
anything that had to do with like pleasing
was-
men basically was approved.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
also like the Brooklyn. So I think it was it's really interesting to really, the Brooklyn ads, I think it was, or Parachute. They had a lot of like, people in bed together.
Mm-hmm.
You have lingerie ads all the time. There was even a moving company, and their ad was, "We will move your children's toys and your adult toys too," which is so funny. Like, I love that ad. But to me, it's like, okay, why can we can even talk about these toys, and as a joke, we can bounce on boobies, because that was like the bouncy castle at the Museum of Sex. Like, there were so many ways where it was okay, but this one specific thing, which are products that predominantly serve people with vulvas, like, were not allowed. And I mean, porn isn't allowed. Ugh. You know who was running another amazing campaign that I was like, come on, but like, is a great. It was the man trimming, Manscape.
Yeah, I remember that.
They do a lot of stuff, and it's funny, and like the humor is okay. But then you had like Billy's, who they had issues with their amazing ad campaign that acknowledged that if you don't shave, you do have hair in on your vulva. Mm-hmm. It's wild.
Yeah. Do you think the press around suing the MTA, like, did that impact your business at all?
Yeah. People would be like, "Oh, did you do it for the press?" Like, "Oh, she just did it for the press." Like, that is why I was running the advertisements to begin with, was because I was trying to get attention to the brand. So, like, yes, to me, it was like, I can get attention to the brand. I can make a stir. I can change policy in a way that aligns with my brand's mission. Like, those are good things to do. So, yes. It did.
Yeah, it makes sense. I figured, I mean, I had been following you all for since your inception, but
Yeah.
I was like, wow, like, I think that caught a lot of people's attention that you had the...
I mean, we're talking about it right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I remember one investor was about to invest and pulled out when he found out that I was doing that. And he was like, I don't who gets into a lawsuit intentionally? Like, no,
Yeah.
he sounded sound and logical in what he was saying, but I remember just knowing that that this made sense, and that it was going to stir up controversy and give us attention, and do it in a way that felt not like just a press stunt. It
Yeah.
felt like it really aligned with what I was just trying to do in the world, and the impact I want Dame to have in the world. So that's why I did it.
Yeah. So speaking of investors, you mentioned a little bit before, but after the crowdfunding campaign, you have all this momentum, and then you raised twice, correct?
So, okay. I mean, honestly, like, I'll give you the cookie cutter version, and like, always be raising in some ways. So we did two crowdfunding campaigns, and in between those two crowdfunding campaigns, we did do like a friends and family round. So some people supported us then, some like really OG investors, but that was back in like 2014 and then 2016. And then in 2020, we raised our first round, so 6 years in, and we raised about $4 million. And then a year and a half later, we raised $7 million.
Yeah. How did you do that? For direct-to-consumer brands, I think, who are like starting, curious.
Oh. So first of all, it's constantly changing again, like that earlier note on how crowdfunding has changed. I think raising capital for direct-to-consumer businesses has also just continued to really change throughout my journey. So like, I do feel like cash is king is always like a very good lesson. Know that. And yeah, what would be the advice? Like, how? Or I can just go and tell you what I did, because I don't know. Like, I think it's really important to have an ongoing, like, again, you're just really trying to build a community of potential investors and to continue to share your passion with them. And then when you are looking to raise, like, you'll have a group of people who know you. So I think that is really important. I want to, like, balance that with something else, which is kind of contradictory, which is like, when you do meet an investor, it's interesting. Okay, I want to say, like, no, it's hard to turn a no into a yes, but my lead investor was an original no, and I did turn them into a yes by just kind of keeping them involved, and they continued to watch us grow, and also continued to see that not a lot of people were investing in us, even though that we were doing better than, I think, a lot of their portfolio company. So, like, you can do that, but also investors, when they're serious and interested, like, they will move quickly. That's different now. I think that people know that there's, like, a lot more time, and they do a lot more due diligence now than they did a year ago.
Yeah. Where were you finding your investors to, like, build this community of investors?
Definitely through other founders, through LinkedIn. Like, like, I would go on Crunchbase and look up different direct-to-consumer brands that I thought had something similar to us and see who their investor pool was. And then from there, you can go find out who works there and see if you can get a soft, like, any intro.
Yeah, that's amazing. That makes sense too. And you're kind of just, like, emailing them updates, just kind of keep staying in their, like, top of mind.
Yeah, it's good to, if you can, I think you want to both run a really, really tight round. So, like, when you go to raise money, like, it's really hard, but, like, you want to come out with it. And again, I don't know how even feasible this is right now, but 2 years ago, you'd want to, like, come out to announce that you were doing it, stack all of your meetings for, like, 2 weeks, and then, let everybody know that essentially by the end, like, 4 weeks later from when you start those meetings, like, you want to be moving forward with a term sheet. So it's kind of like challenging your creating urgency. And I think it's good to try and live by that urgency, even though it's totally constructed, because that applies pressure. It doesn't waste your time. It gets you, like, you just need to start understanding what the offers are.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, it's a lot easier for people to do that if they know you or have a sense of the brand, especially now. Because I feel like people were doing that, like, in the early, digital native brand days. Like, if you just had if you were really good at having some really top level sexy numbers, like, you could just gain momentum on that.
Yeah.
And people didn't even care about profit.
So for investment capital, was that mainly for cash flow, just to go into, like, more R&D? Like, what was the initiative for bringing on investors?
Inventory-based businesses are hard and they're cash intensive. Like, if you want to start a direct-to-consumer brand, I highly recommend you read Shoe Dog. One, it is just a super freaking easy read. And while it's both a reminder how different the world is now, like, he's talking about, like, waiting for, like, mail to come in from Japan. Like, it's crazy. So many of the challenges, which are, like, the continued cash flow challenges, are similar. Like, if you need to buy a little bit more inventory than you had yesterday, that means, like, you need to be saving a lot of cash in order to grow an inventory-based business. That's hard. That's going to limit your ability to market. You can get inventory, like, asset-backed lending can be really, really helpful. But even to get to that level and to get good to get a good loan, having more cash in the bank is really helpful. So It's kind of for R&D, to help with working capital, and to help continue us, like, grow out in different channels.
Yeah, that makes sense. How big is the team now?
We are 10 full-time people, and then we are relying really heavily on, like, a pretty awesome, I don't want to say army. Why can't I think of a better little team? Oh my gosh. Team of freelancers who support the business.
Where does the majority of revenue come from? Like if we think about Dame as like a pie chart, like is it retail?
It's
Is
mostly our website
mostly
still,
e-com?
especially because like our revenue is like when I sell a product to a wholesaler, I'm not making nearly as much money on each product as we are when we are selling directly to the consumer.
How are you driving the traffic mainly to the website?
I think it's still, we do Google search, we do some meta ads, we do some podcasts, we do a lot of press, a lot of affiliate marketing. So, those things kind of drive, but, email marketing, I think there's nothing more important than like word of mouth, build your community. And that kind of feels core.
Yeah, would you say, I think, as an agency owner, like what we're seeing is a lot of our direct to consumer clients like are killing it in the newsletter. Like that's where they're bringing in a lot of their sales, driving traffic to the website from the newsletter, which I think is surprising for a lot of consumers, especially younger consumers. Like I've seen a lot of like Gen Z, even Alpha comment like, no one reads email. Like, who the fuck
Alpha
cares?
can talk now?
Yeah, I don't know.
How old is Alpha?
I think they can talk now. I don't know.
Do we know what that age is? I know my children are Alpha, so they.
How old are they?
They're 2.5 and a half.
They probably have opinions on.
Oh, they definitely have opinions. But I'm sure it's older than that, and I'm sure. Sorry, Alpha. I'm sure you guys can speak. I don't know how old you are, but that is interesting, and who knows how that will continue. But I think what that speaks to is people have bought in and like giving consent to be a part of a community.
Yeah.
And then being like that's really powerful. And again, like since we could not use a lot of performance marketing, a lot of our effort did go to that originally. So
So how are you getting people on the mailing list?
We get people on the mailing list by, I would say most people are probably on there from getting that initial discount. You come to our site, you can get 10% off by signing up to our newsletter. But I do think we have a real focus on like Dame Labs and the power of community and what that can do to help us create better products so you can become a Dame tester. And, that's always been another way we've really grown our list. People are excited about how cool is that? They're excited about participating and helping me make better products. And then are going to give me like their personal details to be a part of that process. And yeah, now they also get to learn about sales and other things.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm still sometimes surprised, like.
Yeah. So so mainly e-com. So just in summary, basically organic traffic like Google SEO and then your email are your biggest drivers. Okay.
Yeah, and like, paid like brand search on Google, making sure you don't have too much of that and that you're not cannibalizing your sales. So just like people are going to search for you, but also not losing sales. Like that's still a nice, a chunk for us.
Yeah. What social, like in terms of the 10-person team and the freelancers, like how many of those folks are focused on marketing?
That is wild. We have it is literally like arguably one person on Dame full time that does marketing. Isn't that
That's
wild?
so wild to me. And this one person's overseeing like all the channels.
She is overseeing she's an amazing project manager. So much of her job, especially is working with a bunch of different freelancers and agencies to kind of get the marketing team to be a unit that does have like specialized people.
How would you describe Dame's like overall approach to social, especially with one person, but who's working with agencies and freelancers? Like what's the kind of North Star there?
I think, what we are doing is we're really kind of centered around our blog. Our blog editor has been with us for years and years and years. And our blog is kind of like core to our education and the content we've been wanting to put out there in an intentional way. And then we'll often take that content and put it onto social. So some things like, I think we always try to think about things like as franchises, like what's a series and how can we split like different series or different things like kind of start on different channels and then you can split it up. And I'd say the blog to other channel is our most tried and true, consistent thing that we're doing. And then we'll usually have a social media manager who will fill in. So like there's that kind of flow of content from blog to other place. And then we also just generally will have like things we're focusing on for the month. And then it'll be the social media, let's say you're the Instagram manager, like your job is to take some things from the blog and put it onto Instagram. If there's promotions, to fit that into your calendar. And then there's also usually like top line things that we're talking about because it's masturbation month or, you know, a campaign too that trickles down. So there's both direction that's high level and then space for the manager to kind of fill in and bring in things that are topical or trending or really like site specific.
Right. So you'll take the blog post and like repurpose it. And do you like create a video or like different formats?
Yeah, I think we're still trying to figure out really all the best things that we can do with it. But yeah, we'll make like a carousel or, you know, and, you know, we've played around too. It's like, you know, again, social is really challenging. Like I am shadow banned. Like, or
you think that's a thing? It's so
I'm
argued.
1,000% positive. Open your phone right now. Like, and
I totally would if I had it.
You did? Okay, like this happened to me yesterday. Yesterday I posted on Instagram and like a person, like just me, and it was about work and stuff. And somebody went to go reshare it or other people went to go reshare it and they tagged both me and meant to tag my company. And somebody else has created the Instagram handle dame.products. And if you type in DAM, if you type until you get to the S, the actual Dame Products doesn't even show up unless you follow us. So if you don't follow us, like you're going to have to type in Dame Products and don't click on, there's going to be another one that looks just like us that you're going to want to click on. You're going to immediately realize it's not us because it's got 400 followers or 1,000, you know, like we have 100, but like that, like you can, that is shadow banning. There's just no way that that's not like there's no way that that account should be coming up before ours.
Right. Why would that? I wonder why someone would make an account like that. Like, what are they getting out of it?
I'm sure they're probably doing it for other shadow ban accounts to like see if they can just gain followers or something. They definitely, I don't know, and it's not like they're posting, but that is infuriating. Like that's not cool.
Yeah.
Meta.
Yeah, I think people have asked, you know, Adam Mosseri from Instagram like all the time, is shadow banning a thing? And they will deny it till the end of time. But yeah, I agree with you. I think there is something there.
And they have tried to be more explicit with certain elements. Like they'll tell you now if like your content is a problem to them. And they are getting better. And I acknowledge that it's really hard. I don't know. But like that's happening. And it's really hard to get their attention and be like, hey, this is a specific thing. This is happening all the time. Like, why can't... Like, if you type in Dame, we are the most popular Dame, I think, account.
Yeah.
There's a Dame magazine. That's awesome. I don't know if they're still... But, like, we got to be probably one of the most popular, followed brand out there with that name. Why aren't we coming up? And I know it happens to other brands, too, in this category. And
we need to sue Meta. They're next.
Yeah, they're harder to sue because they're private. But there's an amazing person named Jackie Rotman out there who has the Center of Intimacy Justice. And she put out a whole report kind of documenting the biases and injustice that Meta has in the way they are allowing for advertising to happen, like what they're approving and not approving. So that's kind of part of the work, but there's definitely other things that are happening. And to some extent, like, I do want Meta to build certain things into their algorithm when something is starting to really viral that, like, does slow it down. in some, like, there's like some element of like, that's a hard job. I can really sit there and appreciate like the challenges of what they're doing, because like things can get out of hand. You want to make sure that it's not harmful. Like I do believe that there is speech that can really incite violence and is bad, and that there is some level of truth, and there's definitely things that are untrue. So what am I talking about again? Anyway,
we're talking shadow banning.
It's real.
I agree, it's real. Officially, you heard it here, it's real. But in terms shadow banning kind of aside, like what kind of content like drives the most engagement for you, and does that translate like from, let's say, Instagram or TikTok? Like, does that translate into sales, and like can you see that if there's something specific that really is consistent?
Nothing converts to, like, it's classic funnels shit. Our posts that are about either promotions or product focus are gonna create the most sales. However, that's not engaging, you know? So the content that creates a lot more engagement is things that are, I think, especially on most social channels, like humor is key. People they're there to be entertained, right? Like, you're getting on your phone because you want to be entertained, and that could be education, that could be thought-provoking, that could be, there's so many reasons, but like, I think that's really important. And yeah, so that content really works for us too.
Just basically having like a mix, like the product, but then
you really need to have a mix, because different content is going to do different things for you. Like, you know, if you're really trying to grow your followers, reels, right? Like that, you're going to get a lot more non-followers who see reels, but what they're looking for isn't going to be like, it's just different. I think each channel is different, and each format even within the channel is different.
Yeah, well, I noticed you all are more heavy on Instagram than TikTok.
We're like not on TikTok at all.
Yeah, why is that?
Because we don't have the person for it.
Right. So prioritizing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always saying I'm going to do it. That's the problem with our TikTok channel, is me.
I understand. Do you think that will become a priority, or you think you're like good, like you don't need it?
No. Oh my God, we need it. We should definitely be on TikTok. Yeah, I think twofold. I think that there are a lot of brands that are finding their voices on TikTok. They're gaining, like, it is really powerful. It is a time-sucking beast. I don't know how those founders who are doing that so well, the way they're going to shape their businesses are going to look different than mine. Like, I get it. Like, I think I would have loved, I think I could have maybe, I don't know, Instagram existed. I love attention, but I'm really bad at social media. So maybe it was never in the cards for me. But
why do you think you're bad at social?
Because I'm a millennial, probably. Like,
I feel that way too sometimes. Like, it's hard to, like, especially
just talking to
on our side as an agency, but also other founder brands that we work with. Depending on like the age or the experience with social, like founders sometimes do not want to be on social at all.
And I think that's amazing. And you don't need to be.
Have you felt like, though, that's been an asset for you, to like that Dame has a face?
I do think that has been an asset for me.
Yeah.
It's also a really scary place to be. I mean, like, I don't really know that many CEOs that everybody still likes.
That's true.
Like, eventually everyone like kind of turns on them. So I don't know. That's a scary. That is. I do think, though, that like there's usually reasons for that, but I do think, especially as like as somebody that is trying to lead a company consciously with morals, as like a feminist, somehow that it's like I'm externally creating higher values or higher standard for myself, and therefore I'm like more likely to really get called out if I'm not doing it right, and I'm not doing it right. Like, I'm fucking it up.
Why do you think you're not doing it right?
Because nobody does it right. Because I think we all fumble, and you gotta fumble humbly. Like, that's that's okay. Like, I think the idea, if I really thought I was always doing it right, like, that means you're not doing it right. So I think that, and there are moments, especially moments where, like, I'm just, riffing and really feeling like myself, where maybe I'm not really, I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. I had to do a controversial opinion the other day, and I told my friends that it's really hard to be the boss, and they all like threw something at me. They did not. It was really controversial, but it is.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. I do think that when you are the boss, like when you are the owner of a business, there's so many ways for ownership, but especially really the owner, your job is very much like try and create stability for other people, and that's hard because stability is a little bit of an illusion.
Yeah, it's true. What are some of the hardest things that you face
As a leader?
As a leader.
Ooh, as a leader. There's so many things that are really challenging. I think it is really hard. I love working with other people and want to be working with people that do authentically feel like I am their friend, and I want to authentically be friend, like, but you're not just friends, right? Like, you have this power dynamic, you have this other relationship, and that's been really hard because, like, I don't know, this is like, like, is it cool to, like, wish happy birthday to somebody that doesn't work for you anymore? Or, I don't know. I think the answer is yes.
I think it's okay.
But, like, I don't know, there's, like, weird moments like that. I definitely think it's okay. But I think there's more to that. Like, what if you let them go? Or there's just, it's hard. So I think that there's, like, I love human connection. It's, like, why I started the business. And that is hard when you have to make tough decisions.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's also it is the, generally speaking, I think, a more powerful place to be, and that's like I wanted to be in it.
Yeah. I think finding that balance where you are like close on a certain level with the people you've hired, but still like earn that respect and that authority. Like that's a difficult it's a difficult balance, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm curious if you're willing to share with us, where is Dame now, like in terms of annual revenue?
We do not
Don't
say those numbers out loud.
That's totally okay.
But it's not our peak, like we definitely, I think that almost all consumer brands right now, especially direct-to-consumer brands, not all of them, you're seeing shrinkage on online.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think for us especially, like, COVID was really a really powerful push. Tailwind? Yeah, tailwinds. I know. Headwinds are the bad ones. And then kind of that shift alongside performance marketing shifts have made that challenging, plus war and all these other things that I can't really control have also changed the investor landscape and the way people evaluate investing in a consumer goods brand. So I think there for a long time it was like, grow that top line.
Right.
I would say generally there was a lot of times where people were like, grow that top line at all costs. Like, I remember a fund that I really, really respected and looked up to passed on us because we were only doubling year over year. We were only doubling. They really like to see their brands triple. They did not care that we were profitable. We were doubling profitably. Which, like, I just, like, want to go back to the girl who then, like, was crying after that phone call and, like, shake them and be like, dude, like, you're doubling and you're profitable. That is so good. Like,
yeah,
you should be proud. And at that time, like, I was so not proud. That's probably one of the hardest things is you got to stay proud of yourself. It's probably not hard for everybody. That's probably like my own trauma and my own shit.
Yeah, where does that come from? I know I
have no idea where that comes from. Like everybody's always telling me they're proud of me, and so I don't know. But I don't know where it comes from. I don't know what it is, but I do know that I think it's really important as a leader to acknowledge the ways that you are insecure, because the way you talk to yourself kind of ends up being the way you talk to your employees. So one, if, for example, like I look at everything and I'm like, oh, it's not good enough. Like, how could we have done this better? Like, what could we do to make this better? Like, what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? Like, that's how my brain works. Like, I'm not great at taking a moment to be like, you did a good job.
Yeah.
I'm like really bad at it. I'm really good at being like, I bet I could do it better next time, which is like a great energy too. So, but that is not a good way both to talk to yourself all the time, and it's definitely not a good way to talk to your employees all the time. And so we got to like make sure that I'm filling up that bank. Sorry, that doesn't make any sense to you. Not the money bank. It's important to acknowledge and appreciate the work that your employees and partners do for you. And then this way, when I'm like, oh, what if we had done this? They are not hearing Alex doesn't like it or like Al thinks this is shit. Like they know that all I'm saying that I do like it because I've already appreciated it at different moments or kind of do that. Like I do think that the compliment sandwich is great, but even better than that is to really make sure you're putting effort. Like it's to saying the positive things.
Yeah.
The Gottman Institute said that like you have to say 5 positive things to every 1 negative thing. They're like a marriage counselor people.
That's a good rule to live by. Mm-hmm. I need to take that advice from myself.
Think about it. You also remember, like you remember the bad things more. Like we all do.
Definitely.
So, and it's so, we do that to ourselves. And like, I think we need to make a really intentional effort to counterbalance that.
So that's a really perfect segue into my last question of what advice you might give to a new direct-to-consumer founder who's preparing to launch a brand or has just started. Like if you could give like 3 pieces of advice to them, what would it be?
It would be, I think, tried and true. You're not drinking enough water. Drink more water.
Always.
Know what you're trying to do. Like 2-3 sentence purpose statement. Like know that, feel it, let that guide you. 3 is when people ask you questions, list them out in 3s because they make really good media clips.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Alex, for coming on the show.
Anytime.